Well, look, everybody's here. Good morning. I kind of push my investment in the money in the United States, blah, blah, blah. All right, the comments already started. And I guess we can start. And the first thing that I would like to say to all of you is good morning. And I hope you're having the best Tuesday morning of your life. I know a lot of you probably don't think that right now, but we're going to fix that. I promise we're going to be able to fix that and look at some framing that perhaps people haven't considered. The first thing, please like, share, and subscribe, and welcome to the Freedom Coffee live stream, where what do we do at the Freedom Coffee live stream? We rotate our tripod so it doesn't fall off of the little thingy that we've set up here. So that's the first thing we do. But we also celebrate the freedoms that we have, freedoms that we've fought for. Many of us have, despite much of the backstabbing. And we look to expand those freedoms in the future. And I think we're well on that way. It's funny. I'm looking at everything that went on last night, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And I saw so many people freaking out online. And I thought, like, what's everybody freaking out about? Okay, I guess we'll have to explain that. I hope you're going to fix it. Janice says, I hope you're going to fix it currently out of the country and not sure want to come back. Well, if you're someplace warm and you're someplace with a beach and a good nightlife, Janice, then you know what? I would stay there for a little bit. So first announcement today at 4 p.m., I'm doing a webinar with a group out of the United States, Citizens for National Security. That is CFNS. That's at 4 p.m. today. So you can register online. The link is somewhere in my Twitter feed. I'll post them all up after this for those of you who would like to join. They're one of the groups that I have given presentations for when I was in the United States. More about, national security issues, things that are going on in politics, things that I had learned throughout the years of being involved in politics prior to the Freedom Convoy. A lot of that stuff is coming to fruition. So that's today at 4 p.m. It's funny. I've been telling people privately, one of the things, I think this is Scott's framing. No, this is Elon Musk's framing, is when they joke, this is a recreational belief, I think, this whole simulation idea. And their whole idea is that I agree. I subscribe to this recreational belief that if we're living in a simulation, then the simulation always gives us the most entertaining result. Doesn't mean it's a result you like or want, but overall, it's the most entertaining one. That sometimes might be a little bit of chaos. It might be some funny stuff or whatever. And boy, did last night deliver. It was so very funny. And we're going to talk more about that. The first thing I think I want to address with everybody, and Megan's here. Everybody's here. Wow. Good morning, everyone. Okay. Well, we'll get to comments. I promise. I'll just post your comments in there, and I'll scroll through them a little bit later on. The first thing I think that's very, very important, and I just posted, all I want for Christmas is for Americans on Twitter, whom I love, to understand Canada is not America. We have minority governments. It is a different system. It is not America. Please, please stop thinking it's America, because it is not. And I'm probably going to mention that a few times in this stream, that we are not America. It is a minority government. That is very, very, it's very, very important. I don't know what it is on X that there's a requirement for civics lessons for people, but we'll get into it. Every night, and last night, by the way, last night everyone lost. It was the night of the losers, except for two people who I will reveal towards the end of this. And you tell me if you can guess who those two people are. But the first thing is minority government. I was trying to figure out what's the easiest way to explain this. So I went to ChatGPT for a quick short summary so I can read this off and firstly cool everybody's anxiety a little bit. And I asked ChatGPT to describe what is a minority government in Canada and what are the implications. And this is what it responded with. And I think this is pretty accurate. So a couple of things here are pretty obvious to most of us. In Canadian politics, a minority government happens when the party in power holds the most seats in the House of Commons, but it's not a majority. Okay, that's pretty obvious. This means they have less than half of the total seats. The implications include, number one, need for cooperation. The governing party must work with other parties to pass legislation. Number two, frequent votes of confidence. The government must maintain the confidence of the House to stay in power. Meaning, if they lose a vote of confidence, an election will be called. This is why it frustrates me when I hear people say, oh, the next election in 2029. What are you talking about? We'll be lucky if we're going to make it through 6 months, but that's another issue. Number three, compromise and negotiation. Policies may need to be adjusted to gain support from other parties. And number four, instability. Minority governments are less stable and might face significant challenges in passing their agenda. So what does that mean? What that means is we are now rudderless, because now we're going to be in the state. I don't know if people remember that when Stephen Harper was in power, he was consecutive minority governments. And that's why we kept going to the polls. You think we're going to make it through 2 budgets with Mark Carney? Absolutely. I'd be surprised if we make it through 1 before we get back to the polls and go again in the election. And people go, well, then what happens there? We'll talk about that another time, because that's when political strategy comes into play. But before we get into the list of all the losers last night, I'm always amazed how we complain that all our politicians are liars, right? Like, we know that's part of the job, unfortunately, for many of them, is to play different special interest groups against other special interest groups and voting blocks against other voting blocks. So we on one side, we kind of dismiss them as untrustworthy, but somehow we get sucked into this emotional political team play, and we're distraught when the team we get sucked into loses. Don't do that. No, don't do that. This is not sports. This is politics. Don't treat politics like sports. That is a bad idea and a recipe for disaster. I've said many times over this stream and presentations at Bitcoin conferences and interviews on TV, radio, and stuff like that, podcasts, whatever. I've said many times that cultural change will not be the result of one election or one politician. That's not how things work. Change in culture is sustained over time. It takes a while. There's not one magic button, one person, one election that changes the whole chessboard. And that's a feature, not a bug. Because could you imagine? Look how much damage the Trudeau government caused with all the friction in government. Could you imagine if he could have just pressed a button and changed everything overnight? What a disaster that would be. So the cultural change will be slow and gradual, and it's the only way out of our postmodern era, the postmodern era that we live in. And we'll talk. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. So first, let's go through the list of losers in what I call the karma election. I got to tell you, I was so happy last night. I did predict and I did think that Pierre Poilievre would win a minority, just a minority. But I also went back and forth with people saying, well, maybe it'll be a Carney minority. But, I cemented, well, it's going to be a conservative minority, and they didn't. So, all right. Here's the list of losers in the karma election, and I'll explain why it's the karma election in a bit as well. Pierre Poilievre loses his seat. What? He lost his seat. The leader lost his seat. And what was astounding is I saw people posting the results from his riding. And what I was astounded by was the amount of apathy, such a low rate of voter engagement. If I remember correctly, the Liberal candidate won with 7,000 and change votes. Let's say 7.5 for argument's sake, and Pierre Poilievre got 6,500 for a leadership race. That's crazy. That is a crazy level of disengagement in that riding. That's how many people, what's the percentage of the people that voted in that riding? 20%? I don't know. It's low. It's definitely very low. But it's so Pierre Poilievre lost his seat. We'll get into that in a second. Number 2, Jack Mead lost his party. He destroyed his party completely. Done. And that has significant implications that you should all be happy about, which I'll get into. The Bloc as well, the Separatist Party, for those who are in the United States, that's the Quebec, the French Separatist Party. They also imploded. I think they ended up with 23 seats from, somebody can check the numbers, what they had before. I don't know, what they have, 30 seats or something, 28 seats. I don't remember. Don't really care. It's a non-party. It's there just to be a disruptor. Carney lost the NDP coalition, right? Because the NDP lost. But he also was a big loser of the night, which is, I don't understand how people are not putting this together, that Carney was a massive loser last night for a bunch of reasons. And there was some French guy. What's his name again? Maximus Decimus Meridius, I think it's something. No, I think it's French. Maxime something. But he had a party called the PPC, which many of us have explained doesn't exist, and well, that was proven last night. So it was the karma election. everybody who deserved their comeuppance got it last night, and I'm going to walk through and I'm going to explain a couple of things. So first, let's get into Pierre Poilievre, who lost his seat and the stupidity that led to that. So the first thing is, Pierre Poilievre attacked Trump. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let Mark Carney do that. I'd hate to tell the conservatives, I've been telling the conservatives this for a long time on the inside. Brace yourself if you're a conservative insider. Trump is way more popular than you. Way more. Trump is revered all over the world. If you're like me and you travel to the third world and you talk to people who are not easily brainwashed by the leftist, postmodernist, name calling and public shaming, they love him everywhere. He's absolutely revered. That was absolutely stupid because that was just essentially abandoning his own base. Oh yeah, I'm going to explain this too. I got a couple of notes here because there's so much into this that I just wanted to jot down. During the Freedom Convoy, in the first press conference, I was asked, I mentioned this in the last stream, I was asked by a YouTuber, what do you think the conservatives should do? I can't remember the exact framing of the question. And I had a pet hate for Aaron O'Toole and some of the dirty money around him. So I explained that, well, probably the conservatives should get rid of Aaron O'Toole immediately. And then the follow-up question I was given is, who do you think would be a good, suitable leader for the Conservative Party? And I said, I think the only person in the party at that time probably would be Pierre Poilievre. Now, why did I say that? Because I mentioned before, I met Pierre personally, didn't like him. It's the first person in politics I just didn't like, just very abrasive personality. I was quite shocked. But I guess they're giving him sort of, counseling, manners counseling or something like that. They've been working on. Somebody told me, to be honest. But anyways, uh, why did I suggest that Pierre Poilievre? It's because remember the 𝐕 scandal, and remember Pierre Poilievre made Trudeau look like a total jackass, like the total jackass that he is. Right? Remember that? It was during COVID. They were doing Parliament from home, and he got Trudeau cornered, and Pierre was like a pit bull. That's what conservatives wanted. And quite frankly, liberals and maybe NDP people, NDP supporters who are tired of Trudeau, that's what they wanted. They wanted a pit bull. They wanted, because they're sitting at home throwing popcorn at the screen because they're fed up. And here came along Pierre Poilievre to tear Trudeau a new one. And he was the first one to do it effectively. There's all these different framings, these emotional framings to be persuasive. And yes, it's very, you want to be positive. Positive persuasion is very, they think in politics that positive persuasion is everything. It's not. But sometimes when people are angry enough, they want to see somebody echoing their anger. That's what Trump did. That's how Trump got elected, because he understood that he had. It's a funny story. He sent his kids to listen. This is before 2016. He sent his kids to listen to daytime radio for a couple of weeks and tell him what's everybody feeling. And what did he did? He echoed their sentiments, which just so happened to, I believe, align with his frustrations that he'd been talking about for 40 years whenever he's asked about politics. So he echoed the sentiment of dissent amongst people on the ground. Pierre did that as well. And then what did he do? He was elected leader, and that conservative machine, which is useless. This is now, they've done a hat trick. They've lost 3 in a row. 3 elections that should have been handed to them, and they blew it 3 times. Why? Because they took Pierre Poilievre, the pit bull, and they tried to put him in Stephen Harper's blue suit. Well, listen, he's not Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper was right for the time. The world is a different place right now. It's changed a lot. And people don't want to see somebody mimicking Stephen Harper. And what happens on a subconscious level, he becomes incongruent because he's misaligned with who he is and the image they're trying to portray. And they do this with every leader in that party. The party is it is so frustrating because and by the way, there are very good people in the Conservative Party who I'm still close with, some people in that party. But the morons that run it, they do this every time. They they try to shove somebody in Stephen Harper's suit. It's incongruent. And then all of a sudden, nobody knows why, but they just feel like, there's something not right. They can't put their thumb on it. That's your subconscious telling you that they're incongruent. No, Richard, I'm going to get onto that in a second. That's a containment party, and that's a fake party. All right. So, anyways, for selfish reasons, why was I laughing? I know many of you don't understand this and you can't process it. I know it's difficult because this is an emotional journey for many people. But, the conservatives, along with the liberals, sabotaged the trucker convoy. So, you know what? Screw yourselves. That's why I call it, that's one of the reasons it's the karma election. And it was so good because it's by the thinnest of margins. It's so wild. But anyways, so they all conspired to sabotage the truckers. So you know what? Karma's a bitch. Can I tell you? But anyways, we'll move on. Now, I've already had people ask me and talk about it online and whatever. I got some personal messages. What's going to happen to Pierre Poilievre because he lost his riding? And there's a thing usually in politics, you lose your riding when the when the party implodes. But in this case, the party grew and the leader lost his riding. So this is a rare situation. So I guess what people were asking me and inferring to is, should Pierre be removed as leader? And my perspective is, unfortunately, politics is the art of backstabbing. Party politics is. That's why I keep my distance from it, because I try to have as little negativity and as few sociopaths in my life as possible. And unfortunately, that's what makes up almost all of party politics. So I keep away from that. If they're smart, which they're not, if they're smart, they will keep Pierre in as leader. And people will say, well, how do you do that? He didn't win a riding. And well, listen, the whole world's not autistic. You know what? So some of us can find, other solutions, right? But I think if they kept, I think it would be wise of them to keep Pierre Poilievre as leader and figure out a way to do that, because right now, who do you have? The delusional fatso, fat Kathleen Wynne or fat Trudeau, which is Doug Ford, has convinced himself that he thinks he can become Prime Minister of Canada. And for those of you who don't know, I know everybody likes the rhetoric, but Doug Ford is significantly more left-wing than Kathleen Wynne was. And so he thinks he's going to be able to knife Pierre Poilievre in the back and take over. And if that's the case, we're doomed. You're going to see Mark Carney get a majority at that point. He's kissed Mark Carney's ass too much that it'll just blow up in the polls. Paul says, the truckers were about freedom. Yes, we were. We were motivated by the ideology of freedom, not the reward of party politics. Unfortunately, those are some of the people who came and sabotaged us. But, that will all materialize over time. I've posted a while ago, Scott and I talked about it. It takes 3 to 5 years for the truth about any political event to come to the surface, to permeate to the surface. And we're 3 and a bit years, and people are finally starting to realize what really went on during the trucker convoy. So, yeah, there will be more conversations about that in the future. Anyways, that's I think that's where we are with Pierre. So he's the first of our losers last night, and I would argue he's probably, I don't know, who's the biggest loser. They're all they all equally lost last night. That's why, for some of us, last night was a treat. It was, and it's a treat because Carney's got a minority government, which we'll get into that in a second. Okay, next, Jagmeet Singh, the hero of the Air India bombing. The hero of the NDP. Jagmeet lost not just his seat, but he caused the entire NDP to implode. So good. Now, as for those of you who don't know, Jagmeet was the shyster that was holding Canada hostage like a peasant, because all he cared about was getting his pension. And you notice shortly after he got his pension, Carney was out and we went to the polls. There's a lot more behind the scenes in politics that is coordinated, including ridings, than people realize. So it was great. Well, Cheryl, thank you. I love your sense of humor as well. It's very sweet of you. There's a lot of comments in here. I'll get to them all after. I'll try to, at least. So anyways, Jagmeet, he did a good job at completely obliterating the NDP. And Carney must be so angry. And somebody asked me, somebody posted, and again, we're all getting lots of messages. Somebody suggested that, if the 5 or 7 members in the NDP, whatever it is, cross the floor, then we got a problem because Carney will dominate. And I don't know if that brings a majority territory or not. I haven't looked at the numbers. That won't happen. At least I don't think so. Because in politics, every person who runs for office, they have two dreams that I've learned. One, they have a delusion that they all think they can be prime minister and famous. The second is, if they can't get that, they want to be elected but not form government. They want to be in some form of opposition. And the reason is, if you are elected but you haven't formed government, then you have a part-time job with full-time pay. Like, they do no work. They have no accountability. And anytime you call the constituency office, the response is, well, we'd love to help you, but we're not the party in power. But if you vote for us next time, send us your email address, and then, maybe we can do something. They get to defer all their responsibility of their constituents onto the other party. I've had people tell me this in politics explicitly, that that's their dream, is to be elected but not form government. And add to that the situation in the NDP, where they only have, whatever it is, enough members of parliament to fit in a minivan, or whatever the meme is. Now you're one of a hand select few people that can reach out to the ideologue big donors in your party, and you become the kingmaker to rebuild the party. That's where the real corruption is in politics. That's where they line their pockets more than you can ever imagine, is becoming the kingmakers in the party to rebuild it. They're not going to give that up. They have a golden situation. They have no accountability. It's a part-time job. They get to bring in as much money. The money in the party is going to be desperate to rebuild, and they're at the forefront of that. So it's great for them. When we cross the floor to become a backbencher and have responsibility in a liberal minority government that's going to collapse within 18 months to 24 months or sooner, nobody's going to give that up. Nobody in politics would give that up, right? Anyways, so that's Jagmeet Singh. He is done and he's over. And I think the big winners of that are the families of the victims of the Air India bombing. If you don't know what that is, you can search it. You can even search that in Wikipedia. Although I would suggest maybe using Perplexity. That's probably best for it. Okay, next, the Bloc. The Bloc Québécois, the separatist party, which is also not a real party, just a disruptor party. They're never going to form government because they only operate in one province. So I don't know why we don't have a mandate that a federal party has to be in every province, but it is what it is. Their numbers are down to 23 seats. Everyone's a loser last night. Everyone's a loser. But the Canadian people are the big winners, which is what I don't understand how people don't see it. This is why political team sport, tribalism, keep away from it. It prevents us from thinking clearly and seeing clearly what happened. So the Separatist Party is down to 23 seats. And from what I can see, that means they will not have any balance of power. So, okay. I'm sorry. It's so funny. And I'm still a little bit sick. Apologize for that. So they now have nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know that meme from the movie VHS with Weird Al Yankovic? What's in the box? Nothing. You are so stupid. That's exactly what the Parti Québécois is. They got nothing. All right. Next, what do we got? We got the big man. I don't know how big he is. Is he short? He looks like he would be short. Mark Carney. Mark Carney is, arguably the biggest loser of the night. But definitely a big loser from last night, because Mark Carney, first he lost the hopes of what they were going for, which was a majority government. Well, that didn't happen. That definitely didn't happen. He also lost his blankie, which was Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, that could give him a coalition so he could retain power for the next, 4 years, several years. So there's no more coalition on the table with the NDP. He also lost the Parti Québécois. They don't have enough for a coalition. Now, will they put those two together and would that be enough? I don't know, but I don't see that happening. I really don't. Given the bloc's perspective on some of our cultural issues in the country, I can't see that ever happening. You never know, but I don't think so. So Carney has no Blanky, no Jagmeet Singh Blanky that's going to keep him in power. He doesn't have a majority. He's got a minority. He won't be able to pass anything. He'll try to do all this, I don't know, net zero stuff. And if the Conservatives can keep it together and Doug Ford doesn't knife everybody in the back in the federal party, then he's going to be in power as a minority leader for a very short period of time, which gives the Conservatives the opportunity to take their heads out of their rectums and use an actual strategy to win. An actual strategy, which they won't do. But that's another issue. But I'll tell you, the concern is that I think you're going to see the propaganda is going to get a little crazy because Peterson was on Joe Rogan and he effectively and accurately addressed the fact that Carney is very, very well networked amongst the internationalists, the globalists, if you want to call them, the corporate wokeists around the world. And what I'm concerned about is Canada becomes, in terms of the cultural battlefront, it becomes the world's Vietnam of the cultural war, if you know what I mean, if I can offer intermingled analogy there. Meaning, I think you're going to see a big investment from the European Union and other left-wing Western governments that are in power that will try to collaborate with Carney, and Canada is going to be the battleground between the leftist internationalists, the globalist postmodernists, and the Trump administration, and kind of the American values of individualism. We're already the battlefront where all the Islamists are staging in Canada to attack the United States. That's why our police, our law enforcement doesn't arrest people or very limited. But I think you're going to see that on a propaganda sort of cultural level, which means things are going to get a little bit crazy in terms of the propaganda here. I think that might be a potential negative that will happen as a result of this election. But I think we're going to be back in the polls pretty soon anyways. Okay, next group of losers. There's more. And then we're going to get into the two big winners. Tell me if you figured out who are the two winners of last night's election. Maybe three winners. I think the Canadian people could be considered a group because now your government is it's just ineffectual. They just won't be able to do anything. And I'm a small government guy, so the less government can do, the better. I'm happy with that. The fact that they'll be in deadlock all the time and won't be able to pass anything, I think that would be amazing. All right. So the next group of losers, you know who those are? Online influencers, social media, Twitter accounts, not you particular. I'm talking kind of the big paid propagandists that have become the fake news equivalent on the alternative media space. Like, for example, what happened to that PPC guy? What happened to him? I saw a couple of polls. He got like 100 votes. Everybody got like 10,000. They got like 100. What happened to that? Right? Where's Tucker Carlson? Or Patrick Bet-David? Or Alex Jones? What happened to their influence? And this is something that was, I've had this discussion with people for many years. And have communicated to people in my personal life, something that I've learned is a guy like Jordan Peterson. but Jordan Peterson doesn't sway any votes because people will watch him, they'll consider him, and that's not going to have any impact on their vote as well. The same for all the influencers. It just doesn't convert. And there's some reasons for that. So people will watch people they like online and admire, but that's not changing their vote, nor is the legacy media. They are also not changing their votes. I'll explain that in a second. But anyway, so we saw there was the French guy who was leading the PPC went on Tucker Carlson, all these platforms, and got nothing. And that party is 8 years with no party constitution because, look, much like Reform UK, it's not a real party. It's a containment party. And then maybe another stream we'll talk about containment party strategies. It's frustrating to try to communicate to people sometimes. When I first was in Mexico many, many years ago, when I was, how old was I? In my early 20s. And I was dating somebody in Mexico, and I went down there. And, when I go to places, I want to learn about the culture. I moved to Colombia. I wanted to learn the language. I wanted to learn what happened there, enrolled in classes. You kind of want to immerse yourself, which is why I get so frustrated when people come here and they want their culture to be dominant over us. I don't do that when I go to places. And I remember one of the very first things I learned politically in Mexico, that at that time, the left-leaning party in power was the PRI. And the girl I was dating at that time, we were talking about politics because we're at their university where she was studying with her friends. And they said to me, do you know how many years the PRI has been in power? I said, no, I really know nothing about Mexican politics. And they said, take a guess. I'm like, I don't know, 10 years, assuming 15 years, assuming it's going to be long. They said, no, 72 years. They were in power for 72 years straight. And many of the political strategies that I had seen over the years of going to Latin America and going to Mexico and Colombia and Panama and whatever, I've been seeing those strategies within Canadian politics now, particularly amongst the Liberal Party. Very concerning, right? Anyways, so the what's it called? So the social media influencers, my point in all of that is they really don't have any influence. And as alternative media has become increasingly captured since the Freedom Convoy, this is why I keep going back to tell people, look at how it's been co-opted. Read the Diverge Media articles and other stuff that's been covered around the Freedom Convoy, because then you'll understand how everything gets captured, because it's being laid out. It was laid out in the POEC. That's what my testimony was about. And people didn't understand that. People in politics understood it. They understood my testimony, but people outside of politics really didn't, right? So the alternative media does not influence people, and I don't believe either does the legacy media. Like, nobody is influenced by Rosemary Barton, really. Like, no, just nobody is. So then what is it? Why are we in this stalemate right now, where that the Liberal Party that should have imploded due to its behavior for the past 10 years didn't completely implode? When you learn a lot over many years, learning communications and running businesses and departments and all that sort of stuff, I've been forced to, and with interest actually, to learn about, human behavior, marketing communication strategies, how to reach people, how to talk to people, which is why when I ran for the Conservatives and they did that slogan, "He's just not ready," and I wanted to smash the computers in front of me, because I thought, you just gave them the election, you dummies, because you know nothing about marketing. Same people who just ran Pierre's campaign, by the way. Because it's a revolving door. That's why they keep losing elections. It's the same people over and over again. When you understand human motivation, which ideologues in politics don't, you understand communication strategies, persuasion strategies, and you understand basic economics, then it becomes really easy to kind of predict people's behavior. I am going to be doing more interview podcasts, by the way. I know a lot of you liked the one I did with 𝐵𝐔𝐿𝐒. I have a couple of people lined up, some prominent people. And one in particular is in this field, this space. We're going to talk a little bit about that. If the answer is then what's influencing people, which gets back to what I've said a number of times in my streams and some of my presentations. Look at the electoral map from last night. Look at all the ridings. What do you see? If you look at the entire map of Canada and all the provinces are broken up, you see riding clusters. So you see a whole bunch of conservatives together in Alberta, into Saskatchewan, and parts of BC and Manitoba. And then when you go, Ontario is particularly interesting, Ontario and a little bit of Quebec. What do you see? The conservative ridings are all networked together. So it's like a cluster. And then there's a whole cluster of liberal ridings together, like a growing tumor. And then next to it is another cluster of conservative ridings or whatever. And it's like that all over the place. It's because the people are influenced by their networks and social proof of the people around them. Their friends, their families, the people they work with. Which is why during COVID, I was suggesting to people, just talk to your families. Oh, they don't want to listen. Well, of course they don't want to listen. That's what a conversation is to engage with somebody who disagrees with you and not to attack them, not to get offended, not start yelling at people. Just talk to them and try to persuade them because we behave in geoclusters all over the world. That's just human behavior. So it's not the media, social media. You can use that as a tool to, if you're reaching out to a group of people and you want to persuade them and you find something persuasive that somebody who might not be completely on board could be swayed by because it's not too extreme to either side, that you can send to them. But it starts from you engaging with them. That's the only thing that's going to fix the country. Because if not, we're going to continue. If we just all find people in social media who are kind of strangers that are going to parrot our opinions back to each other, we're not going to be able to reach the people who are not listening. I'm involved in this project, this venture with Stephen Hicks, Michael Kimmelman, a bunch of other people. And, we're not in political echo chambers. We're not political team play. If somebody's conservative, a reasonable Democrat, there are some, not many, but there are some. There are reasonable liberal, they're called blue liberals. You see some of them in areas of downtown. You disagree on a lot of stuff, but you agree on some stuff. Those are the people you need to talk to and to persuade. The persuasion's not going to be coming from a political campaign, as we saw with Just Not Ready, or whatever the tactic that was used. How do you talk with people that followed arrows around the grocery store? You drop it. You understand that it's not their fault. Most people are a combination of the five people they spend most of their time with. That's how you get the clusters. And if, like, Bill Maher is a good example in the US. Bill Maher's he's really weird because 1 minute you think he gets it, but then he goes back to his network of crazy people and they kind of reinforce the craziness. So he's kind of always in and out. Those people who, as you say, followed arrows around the grocery store, those are not leaders. Those are followers. But we need followers in the world too. Not everybody can be a leader or we would have chaos. Understand it's not their fault. They're just brainwashed. They don't know. And there's the argument that one could say that we're all brainwashed to a degree. We just like our brainwashing. The example that I hear often talked about is the United States Pledge of Allegiance. That's brainwashing. The total brainwashing. But that's good brainwashing. We like that. That brings people together. That brings some cultural homogeneity. So that's positive brainwashing. Those people are just brainwashed in the negative direction. And they need people to reach out to them over time through repetition to slowly drag them out of it. But attacking them and calling them names and labeling them, that's not going to persuade anybody. And it's difficult. Believe me, it's really trying on on one's patience. Believe me, I know. But sometimes you just got to let people. Like when people say things I disagree with. This happens often. I don't attack them every time. I mentioned the Peterson Joe Rogan podcast I was listening to yesterday, the day before. I could tell the points just because we all know Jordan. Some of us have had personal conversations with him, understand his his framework of the world. I knew the many things that Joe Rogan said at certain parts of that podcast that Jordan completely disagreed with. But he didn't challenge him. He didn't challenge him every time. You can't challenge people on everything. You got to let people just say what they want to say and then figure out a way to just focus on the things that are more important, right? Sorry, I'm not responsible for teaching anyone to take no responsibility for their bad decisions. Okay, well then we're just going to continue to have what we have, right? It's not the political parties that are your leaders. You are the leaders. We are the leaders. It means we need to reach out to those people we love and respect and have really silly ideas they've been brainwashed. And if we care about them, we're going to help them out of it. And that's how we break up all these clusters of postmodern extreme leftist nonsense. All right, so we know who all the losers were. The online influencers and the Mark Carney's a big loser. The Bloc Québécois, they're always losers. Jagmeet Singh's a big loser. Pierre Poilievre is a big loser, lost his seat, and maybe even lose party leadership, which would be a mistake. But that's my third party. I have no emotional investment either way. I'm just saying strategically that would be a mistake. So who are the two big winners from last night? Does anyone care to guess? Okay, let me move to the comments here. Oh, hey, Pam. Morning. Pam, BL, Megan, Cheryl, everybody's here. Okay, so who wants to post here? Who do you think were the big winners last night? There's two of them in my framing of the world, how I look as politics, how it's evolved and stuff like that. There were two big winners last night. The two big winners, I think, were, post your things, I'll check in a minute, see if you get it right. NPC says Pierre Poilievre and the CPC won since they got 30 more seats. No, they do that every time. I remember after my election, I'll tell you one of the reasons they get so angry at me. I remember in 2015, Justin Trudeau just won, and I was invited to a few living room events. And this happens when you're in party politics. And you get together, happens across the country. You get together with a couple of kingmakers, influencers, big donors, a couple of members of parliament, senators, and there's 30 of you in somebody's house. And this is, the people who really run the parties. And what they would do is they would go around the room, and I imagine they're doing the same thing, maybe not today, but next week. They'll go around the room and everybody introduces themselves. They always seem to bring people together who don't know each other. The senators and MPs and those people know each other, but kind of like the first-time candidates, those sorts of people, they're just getting into it. And they went around the room at each event. I went to 3 of them, and then they stopped inviting me. They would go around the room, and they would say, introduce yourself. Who are you? Why are you here? Like, what's your involvement? And what do you think about the election and what just happened? And this was the election where Trudeau was first elected. And they would go around the room and everybody would say the same thing. Something I learned a long time ago that I was taught by some people in the know, that intelligence agencies are like cults, and so are political parties. They're cults, and boy, are they cults. You see why they attack me so much? Because I decided to leave the cult, so what do? They got to defame me. That's how cults operate. It's a difference between a religion and a cult. A religion you can leave, a cult you can't leave. Anyways, so they would go around the room and everybody said the same thing. It was crazy. And remember, I'm not like a political guy. I'm a small business guy. Business people are practical. You just got to put out fires and find solutions, and the economics always wins. Be damned with your feelings and emotions. The results are in the economics. So they'd go around the room and everyone would say this. They would say, well, we didn't get what we wanted. We didn't win, unfortunately. Better try next time. But, we did really well. We managed to hold on to our base, which was 30%, something like that. We managed to hold on to our base, and it just didn't work out for us this time, but we'll give it a try next time. Kind of like how the Democrats say the problem is our messaging, not the fact that they're communists, right? And so every time I would be there, they'd go around the room and everybody would say the same thing, that, oh, we did great. My team was really great. We were passionate, but it just didn't work out. We'll give it a try next time. I, as you can imagine, didn't say that. And every time they came to me and they said, I'd say, my name's Benjamin Dichter. I ran in Toronto Danforth, and I'm trying to figure out on what planet you people live. Because we just lost to a moron with no policies, zero, who can't form a complete sentence, and 70% of the country didn't even want to listen to us, let alone care what our policy is. You think that's a win? What planet are you living on? Like, if this was a business, we'd be bankrupt tomorrow. I learned that's not how you're supposed to answer the question. But you know what I mean? Like, I always feel I don't want people to parrot back my own opinions. I want to hear different opinions, just so I know my worldview is correct, or sometimes we're wrong. But they don't do that in politics. It's pretty wild. All right, so we got one guess correct in terms of the people who were the big winners last time. So let me go through them. The first person who's the big winner last night is a name I think most of you will remember, but you should if you're politically engaged. And that is a gentleman by the name of 𝐵𝐷𝐄. And this is not me shilling, although all the CPC monkeys, are you shilling? No, hear me out. For those of you who don't remember, Jim was running for leadership of the Conservative Party. He is very socially conservative, more conservative than I am. I'm more socially libertarian, but we become very close friends over the years. And Jim was running for leader. He outed some people in the Conservative Party who had some particular affections for Sharia law-related financial devices. He brought attention to that because that's usually a major red flag. And the Conservative Party, instead of saying, wow, that's a problem, they knifed him in the back and disqualified him. He sued the party, won. The party was supposed to reinstate him in the leadership race, but he was gaining too quickly, and all these nominations are rigged, by the way. And so they just disqualified him the next day. And then his wife, Belinda, was a member of provincial parliament. She was the only one to vote against Doug Ford extending the emergency powers to the government. She's the only one who voted against her own government becoming authoritarian. And so Doug Ford kicked her out of the party the same day. So Jim and Belinda are or I call them one. They are married, a political couple, but they're the big winners because the conservatives who screwed them didn't win. The PPC that was running fake elections, they didn't win. All the fake stuff they did blew up in their face. And Pierre Poilievre, who was inserted by the Conservative Party, lost his own seat. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff behind the scenes that I don't get into. That's between all of them. But and Jim formed the New Blue Party of Ontario, which is the newer Conservative Party in Ontario. I guess part of the reason Doug Ford's gone to the left. And so the Conservatives created all these fake containment parties to prevent Jim and Belinda and the New Blue from getting any momentum. They're all fake parties. Remember I mentioned the PRI being in power for 72 years and the strategies that have been used in the third world for decades? This is what I'm talking about. Containment parties and fake parties to brainwash people to prevent any real opposition parties from forming. Very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And it's happening only on the conservative side, by the way. So that's the first big winner of last night is Jim 𝐇𝐎𝐿, who I'm sure is at home giggling today. So congratulations to you. And who's the second big winner? Anyone else? Anyone else know who the big winner was last night? Somebody mentioned it. I'll just say it, I guess. There's like a 30-second delay with comments. I'm not going to sit here and wait for 30 seconds. But the other big winner from last night was people's hair are going to go on fire. Really the only leader in Canadian politics right now, and his name is Donald Trump. How that guy always finds two ways to win and no ways to lose. Whether you like him or not, that's not the point. And I watched this documentary on Donald Trump's business history in Atlantic City, running the casinos. And like him or not, wow, that guy's smart. That guy knows how to structure a deal that he cannot lose no matter what. Where it was all these share swapping ideas that would cause, if any sort of bankruptcy would not only affect him, but it would drag everybody down if he went bankrupt. Whether you think that's ethical or not is not my point, but that shows how brilliant he is. And that is the biggest winner. That is one of the two biggest winners from last night. So Jim 𝐇𝐿 and Donald Trump. Why? Because Trump has instigated a trade war with Canada because we have protectionist policies that prevent American businesses from entering the Canadian marketplace. You ever notice why do we only have really 5 or 6 retail banks, whereas the United States has 6,000, and they're complaining they don't have enough? Why is that? It's because of those protectionist policies. So he's now in a position where Canada is now rudderless and leaderless. Well, you think they're going to come to a consent? Like, that was so stupid of Pierre Poilievre. When I know it's not him. I don't think it's him. I think it's the morons around him. That when the Poilievre policy of dealing with Trump was the Carney policy. Somebody I know told me, was it yesterday or the day before, that her mom, immigrant family, they're not new to Canada, but they came to Canada decades ago. And they're not politically partisan. They're what you would call a swing voter, which we don't have a lot of. And her mother said, I don't know who to vote for. Should I vote for Carney or Pierre? Because I didn't like Trudeau. Trudeau's gone. But Carney looks like a conservative, but I can't tell the difference. But we know he's not. I get that. It's just kind of the look, the appearance. Rich white guy. How do the Liberals have the 1% rich white guy leading them? What happened to, the 99% nonsense? But she said, I don't know who to vote for because I don't know what the difference is between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney because they're saying the same thing. That's the type of confusion that led to by Pierre echoing the exact same sentiment as Mark Carney. And this is how I would have done. If I were in that position for messaging, what would my consultation for messaging been, or my messaging would have been running that campaign? Simple. Not Canada is not for sale. What a bunch of horseshit. Really pathetic. What it should have been is they're our longest trading partner. We have the longest open border in the world. Open, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. They're our partners. They're frustrated. We get it. Elect me. I will work with Donald Trump, and I will get us a deal that will make Canadians and Americans have the most prosperous future together in history. Elect me. I will talk to Trump. He's a negotiator. He's a business guy. Elect my team. We're conservatives. Conservatives, we always got criticized that we have a bias towards business. Well, guess what? That's going to be our benefit when it comes to negotiating with Donald Trump and getting a trade deal that's going to make Canada and the United States unified in terms of our economy, the strongest economy the world has ever seen. Elect me, I'll make it happen. That's it. But when you start with attacking Trump, you've already lost. He's very clear. It's very simple. You attack Trump, he's going to grind you into the sand. You say nice things about him, that means you're open to negotiate, and he'll treat you nicely. That's how business is. But it was infuriating to watch that circus go on, and I think anybody involved in that should be fired immediately for allowing that sort of nonsense to go on. Anyways, so I hope that helps. Kind of what I thought, advertise a team effort with the US and the CPC. Exactly. Like you say you want to talk about unification. Yeah, I'm going to unify all of us, and I'm going to unify us with the United States. They're not our enemy. They're not evil. We love Canada. We know Donald Trump loves Canada. He said he loves Canada. You could clip in some little comments of him saying, I love Canada. Trump just wants a modern trade deal. We're going to do it in a way that we're all going to be prosperous. That's it. That's all I had to do. But they couldn't even figure that out. So crazy. All right, let me see if there's there's a bunch of comments here, but thank you, everybody. As a young person who has a little cousin, I gave up on my future, but I fear for hers. Why? I don't understand. It's a minority government. I should have repeated this over and over again. I'll go back to the points in the beginning. It is a minority government. That means Carney has no power. He lost Jagmeet Singh to prop them up when they want to put forward legislation. They won't be able to get anything passed. It's going to be in a deadlock to the next election, which I guess is going to be the next, 18 months. So the Conservatives have 18 months to get their stuff together and have a strategy, which I know the strategy that will work. Everybody knows that message. Max Bernier had the exact same message. Yeah, but he's not a real candidate. It's a containment party. That is there just to make sure no new parties form. That's all it is. As Marco Rubio described it, the crazies, this is how the political class looks at you. They built that party, that fake party, or took it over, I think eventually is what happened, to, quote, capture the crazies. It's not a real party. That's why they don't have a constitution. 8 years, no constitution, not a real party. So minority government, these are the implications. I started with this, and maybe I'll end off with this. These are the implications of what a minority government means in Canada, especially a minority government where there's no possibility of a coalition to prop up Carney. So he's screwed. He's completely screwed. He won't be able to get anything passed. And, if the Conservatives were smart, they would get the people on the left to understand, here's your 1% rich white guy who's not doing anything he said he would do because he can't. So a minority government, Here are the implications of a minority government in Canada. Number one, need for cooperation. The governing party, that would be Carney, must work with other parties to pass legislation. Because it's a minority, they can't get anything passed. Number two, frequent votes of confidence. The government must maintain the confidence of the House to stay in power, meaning if they lose a vote of confidence, one, an election will be called. Number three, compromise in a negotiation. Policies may need to be adjusted to gain support from the other parties. And number four, instability. Minority governments are less stable and might face significant challenges in passing their agenda. So that's it. Stephen Harper started with a minority, then another, then a majority. Exactly. You don't think that can work in the opposite way? Because what room does the Liberal Party have to grow? Especially as you have those NDP insiders, those kingmakers, who are going to want to make a lot of money rebuilding that party. You don't think that will chip away from the left, the ultra-left end of the Liberal Party in the next election if they do it properly? So there's a lot that can change. We have a government that's powerless. Perfect! It's beautiful. Donald Trump's going to own us. That's just the reality. So I want to wish congratulations to Jim Kalaharios and to Donald Trump. The 2025 Karma election is the first election everyone lost, meaning everyone in the Canadian political structure has lost. All right, I think I'm going to shut down the mainstream here. And send me any of your comments or ideas. Follow me on Substack. I'll probably be doing a stream again on Saturday on this and other stuff. I got a couple of articles. I may have an article coming up on this soon. Oh, and somebody said China is the big winner. I don't know. I don't think so, because remember, it's a minority government. No one has power. That's it. It's all artificial. So, yeah, the Chinese can own the Liberal Party, the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. But they can't pass anything. So if they can't pass anything, we're good. I'm good with minority governments for the rest of eternity. It'll be fine. Just get them getting rid of old legislation will be great. But anyways, okay, I got to run. Let me just shut down I'm going to shut down the mainstream. So everybody on YouTube and Rumble, goodbye. I'm going to keep on Locals and Substack for another couple of minutes. If you're not following on Substack, go to bjdichter.substack.com.